Good evening, everyone. Let's bring the mic a little bit closer so people can hear me. And of course, we're about to do tech checks. We're going to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to for once before starting. And it's going to take a few more seconds. Okay, one more thing I need to do here is switch over to make sure the sound is going through my earbuds. Okay, it looks like the sound is going through my earbuds. Now we're going to make sure we have things set up properly. That is not what I wanted to do. We need to present. We need to share screen. We need the entire screen 2, and we need to turn sound on. We're going to try that again because I think I forgot a setting. Just let me fix that for a second. And we're going to make sure oh, okay, it's just a switch. There we go. All right, let's take a minute and see if it's happening the way we want it to.
Wondered if you had a past life, and if so, why can't...
While we're doing that, let's just once before starting. Let's see. And it's going to take a few more seconds. Okay, one more thing I need to do here is switch over to make sure the sound is going through my earbuds. And, well, you can't hear this because this is coming through my headphones. Looks like the sound is going through my earbuds. What I wanted to do, let's skip ahead. We're going to make a few more seconds. Okay, one more thing I need to do here is switch over to make sure the sound is going through my earbuds. And, well, you can't hear this let's see if it's playing. I don't need to hear myself. More seconds. Switch over to make sure the sound is going through my
Can't you remember it? What if I told you there was a secret mathematical code embedded...
I don't need to hear myself.
Within your very soul that carries the memories and experiences. What if I told you there was a secret mathematical code embedded...
Okay, looks like we're good. Looks like everything for once should be going the way I want it to. So, tonight we're going to cover someone named Morgue. Now, this is one of the people that Mortimer81 has introduced the internet to. And of course, Mortimer81 is the one who introduced us all to spirit science. I would like to thank him so much for that, because without spirit science, we would not know that Jews are from space, and they fought a war with Martians, or that the Egyptians were once 60 feet tall, or that basic elementary school level geometry can be used for magical purposes. Morgue seems to be a little bit more of the dark nerd trying to be threatening type of woo peddler than spirit science, who comes off as the harmless, apparently loving hippie. But I want you to take a look and see for yourself as we go through it. Now, before we do that, I want everyone who's new here to take a minute to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're subscribed, be sure to ring that notification bell, and be sure to check out my other content, which isn't always the Faulty Logic Fridays content. Mostly it's about math and computer science. And with that being said, let's get into Faulty Logic Fridays. Let's hear what Morgue has to say. And also, let's start the right button.
Have you ever wondered if you had a past life? And if so, why can't you remember it? What if I told you there was a secret mathematical code embedded within your very soul that carries the memories and experiences of every single one of your past lives? And what if the reincarnation process
I would say you need to prove that I've had past lives first.
itself could be studied and unlocked? Not only are we going to...
Listen, the only thing you're going to find in my soul code is Python, Haskell, and maybe a little C++.
answer that question, but we're going to discover that mathematical code right now. Today, we're going on a journey deep into the hidden realms of the secret science of reincarnation, and it involves banned knowledge, occult
So if we have this mathematical code, do I get to activate my soul?
information, secret societies, mind-bending discoveries in physics, and reveals an equation that governs all existence. When it comes to reincarnation, the big question is, why don't we remember our past lives? We're going to answer that, but think about this. I want you to look around you and take a minute to realize that nothing ever ends. Everything in the universe, it continues. Wood burns and transforms into ashes and heat. Water flows down a river and always goes somewhere. Even if it boils, it turns into steam, still existing, but just in a different form.
Do you mean matter can be transformed from one form into another and into energy and vice versa? Is that what you're trying to say? Because, well, that is simple physics. You seem to be hinting that somehow we'll have this mortal existence forever. You're also going to hint later that our souls are essentially cloud storage, which is interesting, and I'd like to see proof of that. I'd also like to see your Amazon Soul Services bill.
This continuity, this transformation is a fundamental law of the universe. So wouldn't it be kind of strange if your mind, your subjectivity, your consciousness was the only thing that didn't follow this law? Now, I'm not talking about your physical body.
Well, our consciousness isn't actually a product of... our consciousness is a product of the matter that our brain's composed of. But if our brains stop existing, there's no reason for us currently to think that our consciousness go on, because we have no way of knowing.
Body or your brain, I'm talking about your inner subjective experience. But
my inner subjective experience? What does that even mean? My inner subjective experience is not my consciousness. My consciousness or my mind is a product of processes in my brain. My inner subjective experience is meaningless.
What if it doesn't end? What if it's constantly transforming, just like everything else? And what if this transformation of mind could be studied? The answer is that it can. But first we have to ask the question, where did the study of reincarnation begin? In Hinduism, the oldest religion in the world, it's believed that the material universe is Maya, or an illusion that hides the true ultimate reality. Now, the concept of reincarnation is tied to karma, the law of cause and effect. It's believed that the soul, or...
I'm sorry, but I cannot let this go, because you just brought up a principle in Buddhism and Hinduism and showed a yin-yang symbol, a symbol of Taoism. Now, it's not that Taoists don't believe in karma, it's just that Taoism, especially philosophical Taoism, doesn't really have that sort of thinking.
Atman is eternal, and that it goes through a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, known as samsara. Now, the quality of each rebirth is believed to be a direct result of the actions or karma from previous lives. But what is the soul? What is the self exactly? And is it really true that karma is what influences who or what you're going to be in another life? Or is it something?
Well, before we get there, how about you prove that we're going to get another life first? I have no problem with people believing that reincarnation happens, but you're just assuming it's already true, which makes this a big in the question fallacy.
Something else. So to answer that question, we need to turn to secret knowledge. See, in the West, belief in reincarnation could actually get you killed. Let me explain. Did you know that there's a secret version of Christianity? A group of early Christian sects known as Gnostics said to know the hidden teachings of Jesus Christ, and they believed that the material world was an illusion, a kind of dream reality.
And the Gnostics were such a secret society, we have their scriptures today. They didn't do a really good job of keeping themselves secret, did they?
And that the earth was created by an evil god to be a trap, a prison, a kind of hell that would ensnare the soul in a cycle of reincarnation. Well, the church...
Does that include watching your videos more than once?
Saw their teachings as heretical, and their scriptures were burned, and some of their followers were even put to death. But what if they were close to the truth? The Gnostics taught that liberation of the soul wasn't obtained through faith or avoiding sin or karma, but through knowledge, through knowing themselves and the truth of existence. See, a lot of people think that reincarnation is about being a good person, right and wrong, or that it's controlled by karma. But what if it was another kind of process altogether? And what if we could study this process and unlock its secrets scientifically, mathematically? One of the earliest proponents...
Or instead of covering this with Lou, you could just accept the Buddhist idea that you're trying to rid yourself of all ones and reach a state of no wind. Why try to couch some spiritual concepts in the realm of mathematics? Are you just trying to peddle some sort of product to people who like to feel they're smart and spiritual at the same time?
Opponents of reincarnation in the West was none other than Pythagoras. Now, you probably remember learning the Pythagorean theorem in school, but did you know that Pythagoras said he could remember his past lives? He called...
Do you know about as much about Pythagoras as I do? Because I suspect none of this is true, or some of it is, but you are not representing it correctly.
the process of reincarnation the transmigration of the soul, and Pythagoras claimed that he'd been a Trojan warrior, a peasant, and a beautiful woman. Pythagoras was also said to have known the secrets of the universe, and he even began his own secret society where members had to take a vow of silence or be excommunicated, or worse. Some ancient historians say that his followers, the Pythagoreans, actually drowned one of their members for revealing one of their secrets. But what were the secrets of the Pythagoreans? Remember that Pythagoras was a man of numbers and of patterns. To him, everything in existence could be broken down into mathematical equations and ratios.
Yes, that is because math is really good at describing things we find in nature, almost as if it's like a language.
And Pythagoras believed that everything is mathematical, literally. Now, just like Hinduism taught the concept of Maya or illusion, and the Gnostics believed that the material world was a false, dreamlike reality, Pythagoras taught that everything is mathematical, a kind of matrix reality.
I think you didn't quite understand the matrix if you think the matrix was all mathematical. Unless you're going to include logic as a branch of math. Computer science, which would run the matrix with all its code, is applied logic and mathematics.
Pythagoras said, all is number, and number rules the universe. Now,
so this is where people like you and Redeem Zoomer got the idea that math controls the universe? Because I've done a lot of math and I still haven't become a wizard.
do you see what's happening here? Now we're stepping into the realm where we can begin to discover a secret science. See, if reincarnation is real and everything is mathematical, that means reincarnation itself is a mathematical process. So could the transmigration of the soul be governed by a hidden formula? Now, the truth is that Pythagoras was right. It's not just some ancient belief. This is a mathematical reality, and modern physics backs this up.
Wait, what? First of all, let's back that up a bit. Don't you need to prove the soul exists and reincarnation exists before you do any of this? Otherwise, we're not getting there. Secondly, you've been hinting at all this math throughout this, and we haven't gotten a scrap of math yet. We've gotten an idea that we're living in a simulation, and even if we are, it doesn't matter, because if we live in a simulation, it's our reality. And we've gotten this essentially very long sales pitch. And salesmen, get to the point, please.
The physicist Werner Heisenberg said, modern physics takes
All right, I can't fault him for pronouncing German correctly.
a definite stand for Plato and the Pythagoreans. The smallest units of matter are not objects in the ordinary sense. They are forms, ideas, which can be expressed unambiguously only in mathematical language.
I don't think Werner Heisenberg was saying that reincarnation is a mathematical process for that. I think he's just saying that quantum physics is hard to grasp. And quantum physics is still hard to grasp today. That's why we have quantum physicists. And you're going to quote another physicist later in a context that doesn't make any sense. Although I don't believe he's a quantum physicist. I believe he was a string theorist.
The physicist Max Tegmark said, our physical world is a mathematical structure. This means that our physical world not only is described by mathematics, but that it is mathematical, a mathematical structure, making us self-aware parts of a giant mathematical object. Reality is...
Okay, that's a bit of a philosophy of math thing, but I still think you're wrong. No. We use math to describe the universe. It is a language we created that's really good at it. It does not mean the universe is mathematical. If we go away tomorrow, the universe will go on doing the things it does, whether or not we're capable of doing the math to describe those things or not.
We know it is inherently mathematical. From the petals on a flower to spiraling galaxies, there's a pattern, a ratio, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, and a lot more that form the blueprint of existence. Now, look around you for a minute. Take a look and realize that everything is actually a grand mathematical illusion. But what about energy? Well, energy itself
Oh my
is
gosh.
mathematical. Energy is quantifiable, measurable, and we know that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. This is one of the fundamental laws of physics, the law of conservation of energy. So if we accept
I believe the law of physics is the law of conservation of mass and energy, and they finally combine them together about the time you get to high school physics. But I'm guessing you only want us to believe you got to high school physics because you never actually got there.
that our soul, our essence, is energy, then it can't just disappear at death. It must transform. But transform into what? The Rosicrucians.
And once again, we're begging the question. You still haven't shown the soul exists. Not to mention, there's a bunch of non sequiturs here that I'm not even going to bother to address. Your logic just doesn't follow. Plus, this is just a rhetorical question where essentially you're just asking questions, not essentially coming up with any ideas. Can you get to the point, please? Or at least get to the parts I found funny, where you're going on about how the soul is like a cloud computer? Because I have a lot to say about that.
Are a secret society, and they look at reincarnation as a journey of the soul towards spiritual development, a progression over multiple lifetimes to reach the pinnacle of evolution. They paint a picture of the soul as not merely changing bodies, but doing it for the purpose of growing, evolving, like a learner on an infinite journey. Now think about this. This idea of the evolution of the soul fits in perfectly with the idea of it being a mathematical system of energy that's constantly transforming.
What is a mathematical system of energy? Is that a Pokemon?
Now here's where it gets more interesting. Are you ready? This fits in perfectly with the way a neural network learns. In other words, it's very similar to how artificial intelligence and our brains are structured. So
Artificial intelligence is not structured like our brains. Maybe you should actually, I don't know, research something about what you're talking about. Neural nets are, when we're talking about computer science, designed to mimic the function of our brains, and we can make graphs that make them essentially look like the neural nets in our brains. But really, and this is a vast oversimplification, the neural nets are doing linear matrix algebra. It's just a bunch of numbers and statistics that lets us come up with the results, at least for large language models. I can't really speak to how the programs like DALL-E work, but I have a feeling it's something similar. Even my own attempt recently to use the k-nearest neighbor algorithm isn't some sort of proof that reincarnation and the soul exist. It was just a proof that I could do the k-nearest neighbor algorithm, because I would certainly not say it's proof that the dreams in the witch house were written by H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard at the same time. You know, that's a good point, Aries. That might actually be the case here. That I don't get someone who's under a high quantity of THC, I get someone who is grifting, more or less.
is reality actually a cosmic neural network where
No, reality is not a cosmic neural network as far as we can tell. Either in the sense of the neural nets in the brain, or in the sense of the mathematical construct that we use to represent how large language models work.
where each soul is an individual and eternal mathematical node that uses
Wait, each soul is a node on a graph? Great. Can we do depth first searches or breadth first searches, or both on souls? Get back to me on that one. And what are the edges connecting souls? Are all souls connected, or is the vast array of souls an unconnected graph?
every physical lifetime like training data. If our lifetimes are repeated,
Our lifetimes are training data. Okay. Training data. Who is collecting the training data then? I don't think you really understand the concept of training data. Training data is a large body of data that we use to train AIs to do the tasks that we want them to do. Why would we go through all these lifetimes and put them in some sort of celestial cloud to train some AI somewhere else? I don't even think you realize that's what you were saying, but that is the implication of what you were saying.
Is there a mathematical model underlying this entire cycle? And are we part of a grand mathematical formula running its course to learn, understand itself, and become conscious?
Why are you calling algorithms a mathematical formula? They're a bit more complex than that. An algorithm is a series of steps to accomplish a specific task. Yes, they originate in the realms of math, but maybe you didn't know that. And maybe, Morgue, after I'm done here, I'll have to visit some of my brain cells at the location you are named after.
Let's find out. Imagine that the soul isn't anything vague or mystical, but rather a system of mathematical frequencies.
I don't want to imagine this, I want you to prove it. Because once you prove that we have souls, we can actually determine if there's some sort of giant Amazon Web Services in the sky.
This video is sponsored by
hold on.
PlanetScope. I've wanted to do a
We're
video
going to go
about
back
new ideas.
because we don't need to see
Have
them.
you ever wondered if you had energy? Then it can't just disappear at death. The idea,
Where were
but
we in
rather a system of mathematical frequencies. The raw data our soul needs to learn and to grow. The psychiatrist Dr. Ian Stevenson spent.
But how do we know if the soul's growing? If the soul's just a data collection vessel for some larger entity, what does it even matter? And is whoever's collecting the training data going to stop reincarnating us when they're done? Also, could you imagine their Amazon Web Services bill for a celestial cloud?
Spent decades researching cases of potential reincarnation, mainly among children who claim to remember past lives. Now, for over 40 years, he researched 3,000 cases. But how does this help us understand the idea of the soul as mathematical energy?
It doesn't, because I don't know what you mean by mathematical energy.
Well, consider this. If our soul carries the experiences, the data from our past lives, it's plausible that these children were tapping into that.
So our soul carries the data from our past lives, yet we can't remember it. Well, if our soul is a data vessel, doesn't that mean either the data has been hidden, perhaps because someone put a period before the file name and we have to use special techniques to access the hidden files, like ls-la, or maybe someone's wiping our data and giving us a new operating system when we reincarnate. And only sometimes does someone remember to restore our data from our previous lives.
That reservoir of knowledge recalling pieces of their past lives. Now, it might sound kind of shocking or strange, but really think about it. Our brains are, in essence, biological computers processing vast amounts of data. Well, what if these children were
I'm not going to nitpick that one because we are Turing complete.
bypassing the brain and accessing their soul's data, like connecting to an eternal cloud storage system? But that's not all, because in many of the cases, there were a lot of similarities in traits, preferences, phobias, and even physical markings between the.
Great, so souls are connected to some great cloud computer in the sky. First of all, a cloud isn't one computer. It's a network, usually of someone else's computers. So you're saying our souls are basically virtual instances running on God's computer somewhere? Okay.
Children and the individuals that they claim to have been in a past life. Of course, we always need to be skeptical about these kinds of things. But the question is, could these similarities be the result of the soul's mathematical energy imprinting on a brain and body?
They could be, or you could say something that actually made sense. The choice was yours, and you chose the first option.
But here's another twist, this time delving into near-death experiences, or NDEs. Many people who've undergone NDEs report having a life review, a kind of playback of their important life events. Well, could this life review actually be a way for our soul to go over critical life experiences? Well, if we consider our physical experiences as being training data for the soul...
Oh, for heaven's sakes. You still, even if your analogy made sense, which it doesn't, training data for the soul doesn't do us any good if we want to improve, if we don't remember it. Is it training data so whoever is collecting the data can improve their model? Please actually understand what you're talking about next time.
This life review could be part of the soul's learning process, going over the most impactful moments of that life cycle. But this brings us to an incredibly important question, and that is, why don't most people have access to the memory of their past lives?
Because they don't have access to the pseudo-Earth file.
Before we circle back to that question, and we will because it's key, there's another piece of the puzzle we need to consider. What if there was a single mathematical formula that governed all of existence, including the reincarnation process? Does that sound impossible? Physicist Michio Kaku said, "Ultimately, the laws of the universe will be reduced down to a single equation, perhaps no more than 1 inch long." What if we actually...
Michio Kaku was talking about a grand unified field theory. It's still something that's highly sought after in physics. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but he certainly wasn't going to tell you that that equation, if such an equation existed, was going to tell you about reincarnation. Even if all the physical laws of the universe can be described with that, there are other sciences with their own laws, with their own equations. Biology's Hardy-Weinberg equation is not going to go away just because we have a grand unified field theory.
Knew that formula? What if it was a formula known as Euler's formula? Now, this formula has stunned mathematicians.
And you're going to show an integral, which I don't think is Euler's formula. Give me a second while I look that up. What is Euler's formula? Because he's going to show a different formula later, and of course it's going to be a contradiction. All right, that's what I thought it was. So I'm going to put Euler's actual formula, which he's going to get to later, in chat. If I can find a good representation of it that will let me copy and paste it. Apparently not. But we're going to have to do this a different way. Give me a second here. And we will show the formula on screen, just so everyone can see it. All right, Euler's formula is that thing right there. E to the I power, quantity raised to the x power equals the cosine of x plus I times sine x. That is not what he is showing. In fact, that just looks like an integral I might have solved on my calculus final a couple semesters ago, but I don't think so because there are symbols there that weren't in the calculus final.
Physicists, and philosophers. When it comes to a certain result of this formula, mathematician Benjamin Pierce said, "It is absolutely paradoxical. We cannot understand it, and we don't know what it means, but we have proved it, and therefore we know it must be the truth."
And Benjamin Franklin Pierce said war is hell. He also said, and of the two, of war and hell, war is worse, because there are no innocent bystanders in hell. It's just as relevant. But no, you are trying to say that because a mathematician has come up with the proof of Euler's formula, that therefore they've proven reincarnation, and that is just an amazing non sequitur. Honestly, I am surprised you didn't need to stretch before that leap of logic.
Mathematician Keith Devlin said, "Like a Shakespearean sonnet that captures the very essence of love, or a painting that brings out the beauty of the human form that is far more than just skin deep, Euler's equation reaches down into the very depths of existence." Euler's formula.
And hyperbole on the part of mathematicians, especially when they're talking about formulas they admire, is nothing new. I once had a calculus professor who told me not to write my Newton's method program until I finished the class. It's just as relevant as what you just said. And to be fair, I did wait until after the class was finished to write the Newton's method program. It works. I can pass a link to it if I really wanted to, but I don't.
Formula, named after the great Swiss mathematician Leonard Euler, might be more deeply intertwined with the nature of our soul and reality than we ever imagined. Euler's formula, which is e to the ix equals cosine x plus I sine.
Wait, you mean you finally got to Euler's formula? You mean that thing you showed earlier actually wasn't Euler's formula? Not only did you get the first formula wrong, I think you've got this one wrong too. Although I don't know if it'll make a difference. Yeah, it won't actually make a difference, but the way it's grouped is usually written differently.
Sine x is profound, and it beautifully describes a perfect circle in the complex plane, symbolizing cyclical processes, much like the cycles of reincarnation. But what's
Okay, so we're just making irrelevant connections? Yes, it can signify that. But I want you to consider something. I have no problem admitting this math is beyond me. I know a lot more about math than a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm some super mathematician, Morgue, and neither are you. I suspect what you're doing here, and maybe I'm off about this one, is just trying to sound intelligent because you know most people won't know what you're talking about.
really fascinating about this formula is that it gives birth to waves, and these waves, or
The formula does not give birth to waves.
frequencies, are the foundation of all waveforms. They form the basis of light, sound, and energy itself. In other words, this formula generates mathematical frequencies that could.
What is a mathematical frequency? Is he actually saying using that correctly? Let's look that up because that might actually be a term that actually exists, or he could be doing word salad. All right. The frequency is the number of times a data value occurs. Okay, yes, so if you're doing a periodic function like sine, cosine, or tangent, you will have frequencies for the y values.
Would be the formula that governs the inner dynamics of the energy of our soul. But not only that, it could also generate the illusion of a physical world. How? Because these frequencies.
Math equations cannot generate the illusion of the physical world. There has to be some other mechanism. We can create the illusions of a physical world. We do it all the time. Video games rely on it. And while the underlying processes involve a lot of math, there's still something physical there causing it. Even if we're running on top of several layers of simulations, there still has to be something somewhere that isn't to run at all.
Frequencies, through a process known as a Fourier transform, also have the property of being able to holographically project the illusion of a physical universe, just like the Maya of Hinduism, the dream realm of the Gnostics, and the math.
I do believe Fourier transforms can be used in computer graphics, but I have no idea if he's actually right about this.
Mathematical universe of Pythagoras. Could it be that Euler's formula is actually the mathematical representation of the structure of the soul, the reincarnation?
So our soul is a perfect circle. Okay. I don't realize if you realize that's what you essentially just said. Not only is it a perfect circle, it's a perfect circle on a complex plane, and apparently it's a node somewhere on God's cloud.
process and all of existence. Could this formula govern the soul's journey, cycling through lifetimes and spiraling up towards higher levels of evolution and consciousness? Could it
Wait, what? Morgue, I don't know if you know this, but a circle is 2-dimensional and a spiral is 3-dimensional. So if it keeps going around the circle, it's not going to spiral upward. In the 3rd dimension, it can't do that.
be the governing formula through the frequencies that it generates that structures mind and all reality? And could it be behind this cosmic neural network? In fact, in our system, this equation is so important, we call it the source formula. Imagine that your
May the source be with you.
soul, my soul, every soul could be governed by this beautiful equation. You see, it's not just numbers and symbols. These are actually living frequencies. We are each individual soul.
Living frequency? What? Listen, why don't you and Jordan get together and do some videos?
Songs in this symphony of existence. See, not only did Pythagoras see reality as mathematical, he saw it as music, because music.
You mean a mathematician who had some weird thing for music saw the universe as mathematical and musical? The Pythagoreans actually set music back several centuries with their rules for music.
Music is mathematical. He said, there is geometry in the humming of the strings, and there is music in the spacing of the spheres. But what about the big question? If reincarnation is real, if our soul carries the data from our past lives, then why don't we remember them? See, remembering.
I just told you, someone reformats our brains. Someone reformats our souls before they get input into a body. And then we get a new operating system. There's not enough space to carry all our previous experiences because cloud providers have so much more storage because they have a lot more hard drives. I mean, whoever is doing the celestial Amazon Web Services clearly has enough space to populate at least the Earth with human souls. And he's going to need a lot of processing power. But he's not going to put all his processing power into one vessel. And if our old vessels perform their tasks and are no longer needed, there's no need for us to keep that data.
Everything might not be as beneficial as it might seem at first.
I think I might have accidentally made as much sense as he did when I was trying to be ridiculous.
Imagine remembering every single meal that you've ever had, every sensation, every painful moment. It would be pretty overwhelming, right? In the grand scheme of existence in this universal cycle, our soul's journey could span millions and millions of years and a near infinity of experiences. If we remembered all our past lives, all those experiences, if we had all that in one lifetime, it would be like trying to take a drink of water from a fire hose. It's just too much. The act of forgetting actually might be a necessary mechanism, a function of the brain.
Oh my gosh, he actually said something I agree with. If we had a long enough existence, or even if we could remember everything in this existence, we wouldn't want to.
Way for our soul to focus on the present life, to fully immerse itself in the here and now. This is known as brain filter theory. See, we aren't our brain. What we actually are is the eternal soul. The brain is what we
Our brain is an organ.
Link to in order to experience physical reality, and it limits what we know as an evolutionary mechanism for our survival. Aldous Huxley said, to make biological survival possible, mind at large has to be funneled through the reducing valve of the brain and nervous system. What comes out at the other end is a measly trickle of the kind of consciousness which will help us to stay alive on the surface of this particular planet. Ultimately, we're beings of eternal frequency on an
Eternal frequency? What does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to hear What's the Frequency, Kenneth over and over again in the afterlife? Or does that mean my frequency is infinite? And if it's infinite, is it really a frequency? Or did you my frequency was eternal, meaning going on forever?
journey here together. And guess what? You might have noticed a shift happening right now. All the old ways of doing things, they've failed. And what the world
Is that possibly because our technology is improving, and as a side consequence of that technology, we have increasing polarization with people increasingly getting filtered into their own echo chambers and not listening to the other side?
needs is a new beginning. As Neogenians, we're here to create
What is a neogenian?
that new beginning. And one way we're doing that is by recognizing that the shift in consciousness that's occurring right now needs to be acknowledged and seriously studied with even more rigor than science. We're in
With more rigor than science? How about showing that what you're talking about actually is real first? If only there were some sort of method you could use to do that, that provides testable real-world results and has worked pretty well for several centuries now. Well, as far as I know, no such method exists.
engaged in studying higher consciousness through a new psychology and the mathematical nature of existence, reincarnation, and the soul's journey through our system of meta-rationalism, which says that metaphysics can be understood rationally. What I just described to you in this video is just a tiny sliver, a tiny piece of our
Ah, there we got you. The sales pitch, finally. You could have saved us like 15 minutes of this video by putting that at the front.
system. Are you ready for the new beginning? We are the Neogenian. But just a minute, because if what I said about the universe being holographic intrigued you, then check out
I assure you it did not.
this video that I did on a declassified CIA document that reveals reality isn't physical and ultimately shows that you are God. Now,
Wait, it ultimately shows that I am God? Okay. Well, that is enough for Morgue. I am not sure why it has not gotten the same level of attention that spirit science has gotten. Perhaps that's because ultimately spirit science doesn't come off as slightly threatening, and spirit science comes off as infinitely sillier. But I am afraid, Morgue, I will be rejecting your Neogenian movement, whatever it is. The sad thing is, I've known some people like you who are sincerely well-meaning, but a lot of times, like, if we think we're smarter than other people, we tend to look down on others. And we will come off in an off-putting way. And Morgue, I think that's what you're doing here. I think you actually are above average intelligence, and you're trying to find a way to fit spiritual beliefs into your intelligence. Or I could be wrong, and it could just be that you're well-spoken and articulate. Either way, Morgue, thanks, but I'm not swiping right on this particular sales pitch of yours or any other one I've seen. All right, everyone. That will be it for this Faulty Logic Fridays. If you have any additions that you want to make, please do so in the comments section. If you have any videos you want me to cover for this section, and we're going to try to get a bit more away from the religious topics we've done. This was kind of a slight step away from it because we're still getting into what is a religious belief for many. Please give me the suggestions in the comment section or respond to one of my community posts. All right, everyone, go out and write some excellent code.